Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back, everyone, to my YouTube channel. My name is Stef, and I'm the Psychic Soul Alignment Coach. This video is a really special video for me. It's very important to me because it's something that I've been wanting to address for quite some time now, which is on the subject of racism. And I really felt called to come forward and invite some of my friends, women that I appreciate, that I admire, that I respect, to come forward and speak on this subject, because I think it's something that we can all continue to expand our knowledge on and to grow from and to really just benefit from as we share our lived experiences and our perspectives. Now, the reason that I'm doing this video today is because I recently started this thing called Conscious Roundtable Conversations. If you have not checked out previous episodes that I've done, I will put them up in the cards for you to check out here on YouTube. The previous videos that I've done are on spiritual entrepreneurship. And this video today is going to be all around racism, spiritual activism, and spiritual bypassing. Okay, I have done videos in the past, last year, especially because of Black Lives Matter, which really prompted me to be more outspoken on these subjects. So if you have not yet checked any of those videos out, I really suggest that you go and watch them if it's something that really speaks to you. I will put that up in the cards as well for you to go and watch. And I really do hope that you do gain a lot from this conversation today, and that it really helps you to expand your consciousness, to really expand your level of empathy and understanding of other people's real life lived experiences. So this has been probably, like, I think the second or maybe third time we've kind of tried this video here, but we're having some technical difficulties because we're still in the retrograde energy, but it's okay. We're going to keep moving on. And right now, I just want to go ahead and introduce you to my friends, which I have invited on this call. So ladies, if you could please just introduce yourselves, say where you come from, and just anything that you feel called to share real quick, about yourself before we get started. Janet, do you want to start?
Okay, yeah, no, I'll start. I'm Janet Mohaffey-Banks. I am a breakthrough coach for ambitious creatives, leaders, entrepreneurs, and change makers. I basically help you to dissolve all of the limiting beliefs you have using mindset, manifestation, and lots of energy clearings as well. So you get the more that you're searching for. And, as we are part of the universe and the universe is always expanding, we are always wanting more. I currently live in Vancouver, Canada, which is the most incredible place in the world as far as I am concerned. And I'm, as you can probably tell from my accent, I am originally from Britain.
Thank you. Sonia, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so hi everyone, and thanks for having me, Stef. I am Sonia Capratella. I am a love coach, Reiki master, and energy healer and psychic channel. And my work is helping big-hearted single women find love through a place of empowerment, healing, and emotional braveness. And my work is very much around, energy healing, soul work, and helping people empower themselves rather than coming from a space of fear or lack. I grew up in Singapore, and I migrated to Australia when I was 16 by myself to go to university, and I have been in Australia for about 24 years now.
Oh,
yeah,
that's awesome. You're brave. What about you, Connie?
Hi, I'm Connie Lee, and I'm in Ontario, Canada. And I am an online business manager and doing some business coaching as well to help people with stay in alignment through human design and just intuitively led. And so I basically help mainly coaches and healers to get the stuff that they need done in their business, like the strategy and the mindset together. Awesome. And thank you for having me, Stef.
Yeah. Yes, and you're in Canada.
I didn't say that.
No worries. I'm super excited to have you ladies here. Connie, by the way, is in Canada. That's where you were born. Was that where you were born? But your family is originally from Hong Kong, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I'm just super excited to be doing this conversation. And I really am so grateful to the ladies who are being a part of this call right now, because it's a bit tricky coordinating different time zones. Like Sonia's right now in the other side of the world. And we were trying to figure out a time that could fit all of us based on our own, personal lives and responsibilities. So I'm just super grateful to have these amazing women here present with me to have this conversation. And I'm really excited also because everyone has just like a diverse background. Okay, I'm Latina. I was born in Peru, raised in the US, but I've been living in Latin America more or less for like a decade now. Connie has that Hong Konger Chinese background. Sonia has her Indian background. Wait, right? Sonia,
Yes.
I don't want to
Yes.
misrepresent
Yeah,
you.
no, no.
Like, hold on a second.
No,
And
Indian
then-
background from Singapore, yeah.
Yeah. And then Janet is mixed as well. And she also has British flavor to that. And so I just wanted to kind of have all of us share our unique perspectives and insights on the topic of racism to really just support people. And first of all, before we really start this conversation, I want to firstly make clear that in whatever we say today is in no way to try to put down white people in any kind of way, okay? Because especially everyone here on this call has connections to white people. We've either dated them, we've married them, we have children that are mixed, we have relatives, that
I'm
are
not white.
Yes, exactly.
My mother is white.
Exactly. Janet is half white. So this is not to, make white people at all feel bad in any kind of way. But we do want to possibly address the fact that a lot of the issues connected to racism stem from white people way back in the day who decided to create this game around thinking that, white was better and trying to make people of color become or be perceived as inferior, right? And to hold them back in life. And so it's important to address those topics. And myself as a healer, what I have had to really embrace in my own journey is the fact that if you don't address the past, then you really can't move forward. You can't change your life. You can't move on. And so even though it's uncomfortable sometimes talking about a topic such as racism, and depending on your skin tone or your background, it's uncomfortable for you. You might perceive it as, we're trying to maybe make you be the bad person here or the villain, but that's really not our intention. Our intention is really just to address the fact that racism still exists today. And it's something that we all need to really increase our awareness around, and to, if we feel inspired to, especially after this conversation or other interactions, to really be more proactive in dissolving in whatever way we feel called to do that. So first and foremost, I guess to begin this conversation, now that we've got that out of the way, I want to hear from everyone's perspective around what experiences you've had with racism, whether that's because of the country you live in, the area, because we all have our own unique backgrounds and experiences. And I really want everyone to understand that not every person of color has like a similar experience or relationship with racism as everyone else. Like, we're all unique. Even, last year, as I was processing Black Lives Matter and processing, the racism that I was exposed to growing up, I spoke to a friend who is a Black French person, and they told me that they really hadn't had any like situations or experiences with racism, which kind of blew my mind. But at the same time, I know that it exists. Like, there are people of color out there who really haven't had any kinds of, like rifts, I guess, or have had any issues with racism. And that's great for them. Like, God bless them that they didn't have to deal with that. But for a lot of us, I think maybe most of us, we have had issues with that. So I kind of want everyone, if possible, to kind of share your own experience with racism and how it's made you feel. So who wants to begin? All right, I'm going to play. Go ahead, Sonia.
Okay, cool. So I am of Indian background. I grew up in Singapore. And, Indians are a minority race in Singapore. And the Chinese are the dominant population. And so, my childhood was very much defined by being lesser than, my Chinese counterparts. And Singapore advertises itself as a melting pot of cultures, which on the surface it appears to be. However, if you live there and you're part of an everyday experience, the reality of the situation is very different. You know, I've been in situations where I've been in a lift or elevator for some of you, I think. And if there's, you know, there was a Chinese person in there, they would hold their nose because I was a person of color and therefore I likely smelled bad. You know, I've had experiences where if I've been on a bus, for example, I wasn't allowed to sit next to a Chinese person, or if I had been on a bus and I'd sat on a seat and a Chinese person, and I evacuated that seat, the Chinese person who needed that seat would come there and kind of like tap the seat really hard, almost like to get rid of the blackness. You know, and these were experiences that really defined my childhood, and so much so that, and I've never actually spoken about this too much, but so much so that when I was in high school, I pretended that I wasn't of Indian background. Because I was lighter skinned, I could get away with the fact that I was potentially from a mixed background because I was a light skinned Indian. And I did that for many years. And the lack of opportunities that were available to me certainly defined how I felt about myself, my worthiness, my level of self-love. And when I moved to Australia, it was a breath of fresh air for me. And it was many, many years of healing, on my, you know, my ability to love myself, my worthiness based on the color of my skin, because that work around worthiness just extended to every part of my life, because it was conditioned in me from such a young age that my worth was related to the color of my skin. And it was very painful. It was incredibly painful. And it's been a journey to embrace my culture and to love my culture, and to visit India and be so mesmerized by the beauty of it all. And, you know, in living in Australia, I'm so grateful that I haven't experienced racism, and it hurts my heart because my sisters are still in Singapore and I see how their opportunities are so limited based on the color of their skin. And it's disturbing. And I think, you know, like I say, I'm very lucky that in Australia, I've really not experienced much racism at all, not in the workplace. My career opportunities have not been diminished based on my race or my name. I have on one occasion experienced racism, and that is because, you know, I am married to a white British man. And I have on one experience kind of been looked at with absolute disgust when I've walked in with him to a place where I would say there is a more traditional mindset of the people that live there. And so that was really disappointing. And that was fairly recently, actually. So I've gone about 13 years in Australia without experiencing racism. And that was my first encounter with it in Australia.
I have a quick question in regards to your share. By the way, we're all learning here, so
yeah, of course.
we might ask questions that
go for it.
Seem ignorant, but whatever. You know, I'm over here trying to learn and be better. So that's the whole point of this call. So when you said that recently you got like nasty looks from traditional people, are you referring to like white people who see you with your husband? Okay.
Yes. So we have these things called RSLs here, which are kind of like little clubs. And weirdly, we were trying to buy a house and there was an auction that was being held at this club. And so the people that frequent these places are generally, yes, white, traditional white people, older people. And, you know, I think my husband has learned a lot about my experience with race through me. And he noticed it as well. And I think it was very shocking to him to actually experience that for himself.
What did he say?
He didn't really have any words, to be honest. It was just disbelief. It was sheer disbelief because, you know, and I say this to him all the time and I joke, I'm like, you're a white man, you're at the top of the food chain. You know? You don't actually necessarily have these experiences. And so he was really, really shocked. And, you know, in conversation, it was really an opportunity for me to go deeper with him into my experience around racism and the things that I've experienced through my life. And, you know, kudos to him. He took it really as a learning experience and more around like what else he could do to be able to learn and deconstruct his own views where he might think, you know, may not constitute as racism, but actually perhaps do. And so our marriage is also very much about that education piece, because, you know, if we decide to have children, our children will be half Indian. And there is a possibility that they will face racism out there. And so it's really important for him as a potential parent to be able to have an understanding around that and empathy and continue to learn in that space.
Yeah, I love what you said right now, because I relate on so many levels. Growing up as a Latina in the US, and then me having issue with my own sense of identity, like, you know, am I Latina? Am I American? Neither or. And even rejecting myself on some level. And I wrote posts about it last year on that when the whole Black Lives Matter stuff was happening, because I think systemic racism is just so sneakily like built into things. And also, like, in the US, it's such a big country, and it depends on like which state you live in, what you're exposed to, like the groups of people that you're exposed to. And so where I grew up, it used to be predominantly like white, maybe Black, and there weren't many Latinos back in the day. And so the schools that I went to were usually like white, you know, there was like white people, and even if there were Latinos, they didn't speak Spanish very much, or at least not at school. You know, we all were Americanized, and you subconsciously kind of reject that part of yourself, like, oh, I can't speak Spanish, it's not cool to speak Spanish or whatever, and you think you're American. And then, you know, especially with me being undocumented in the US at some point and learning that, it's like, well, here I was, you know, thinking I was American, but I'm not either, and I'm not Peruvian, and like, what the hell am I? And so, yeah, I rejected myself a lot, and I can totally relate to that sense of like not knowing where you fit in, that you experience. And yeah, you know, like rejecting that part of you, you know, rejecting your own culture, your own roots. I totally get that. And that's sometimes what I feel, you know, it has to do with racism, but then it also depends on like if you migrate to different countries as well, like what that place where you live at is like. And you know, growing up in the US, like I think the US prides itself, like many other countries, around being like a melting pot, cosmopolitan kind of place of like all these different cultures and backgrounds, like, oh yeah, we accept everyone. But it's like, no, you don't. You don't really accept everyone, because in the US, like how many of us have seen videos online where people are like, this is America, we speak English here, and all this other stuff. And especially me growing up in a southern state, like, you know, that's kind of like the mentality there. It's like, yeah, the country overall likes to pretend that it accepts everyone. But then, you know, depending on where you grow up, and even in diverse places, you'll still have people of that closed-minded mindset, not really accepting you, not really accepting your culture. And if you dress like your typical, you know, traditional clothes, or you speak your native language or whatever, they look down at you, or they like, I don't know, they just think some negative things about you. And so that subconsciously makes you feel, or even consciously makes you feel like you're not safe. You're not safe to hold on to that part of you, you know, to embrace your culture. You have to assimilate or you get eaten, basically, you know? And so I think that's a tricky thing right there with racism. What about you ladies? I'm talking a lot.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I can see, like, you know, the whole Trump era has given a legitimacy for people's hatred. And so it doesn't surprise me that you've lived in Australia for like 13 years or whatever and never experienced racism, but now all of a sudden you have. That doesn't surprise me at all. And that's because people are, they're not hiding their racism anymore. They are wearing it like as a badge of honor and a little red hat. And they're proud to be racist. And you know, I'm like 51 years old. And in my lifetime, this is quite new. You know, like when I was little, I used to go on anti-apartheid marches with my parents. My father is Black South African. My mother is white Welsh. And like I said, right at the top, I'm half Welsh. I'm half Welsh, half white, half black. And yeah, there was like a stigma attached to being called racist, like forever and a day until recently, like these last whatever years. Yeah, there was always a stigma attached to it. Like if you call somebody racist, that was like worse than them being racist. Yeah, but now it's not. Now people are proud. They are proud to say, yeah, I'm holding on to the white ideals. People are proud of that.
I don't know about those
like
people.
Say again.
I don't know about those people. I don't know any of those people, but maybe we see them in the news.
Yeah. I mean, in my life, in my present life, especially in my present life here in Vancouver. I mean, I've only been here since January, and this is June for those people watching in the future. But yeah, what I love about Canada, what I love about Vancouver especially, I can't speak for the rest of Canada, obviously, is that I can literally walk like 2 blocks and hear 5 different languages, see 5 different cultures, and it's completely diverse. Like there is the most diverse country, city that I've ever been in. And I've been to a few places around the world now, but this is most definitely the most diverse. People speaking, their own languages, like you were saying, Steph, not wanting to speak Spanish because it wasn't like cool or, accepted or whatever. But yeah, that's not my experience of being in Canada at all. Growing up, when I was 13, I had a job as a waitress in a restaurant. And it was back in the day where the smokers used to sit at tables in the back and the non-smokers used to sit at tables in the front. There was this one time I was in the restaurant on my own. It was very quiet. Black guy comes in, he's a smoker. So I seat him at the back of the restaurant because that's where smokers sit. And then a white guy came in, I sat him at the front of the restaurant because that's where non-smokers sit. And I went to go and get them bread. And when I came back, they were having this big old argument about where they were sat. So this is, if I was 13, it was the 80s, 1980s in Clacton-on-Sea, England. And they were having this argument about the places that they were sat. The black guy didn't like the fact that I'd sat him at the back of the restaurant. And that's obviously all, all the racism that everybody had experienced up until that point, where black people were, Rosa Parks sit at the back of the bus, that kind of story. Yeah. And the white guy was saying, well, like she's black, so, she wouldn't be racist towards you. And the black guy was going, well, she's not black, so yeah, it's perfectly possible for her to be racist towards me. And I'm like, whoa there in the middle. And in the end, I just had to go, and by this time they're like on their feet and they're going, rah, rah. And I'm like, whoa. I'm a Janet. That's who I am. I'm not white. I'm not black. I am a Janet. And I was, like I say, I was like 13, 14 years old. And that, to me, I didn't even realize it, how powerful that was, that I just wasn't identifying with anybody or anything else. I was only identifying with me. I'm just a Janet. That's it. And they were both like, ugh. And then because this little tiny girl was like, shouting at them, going, wow. They both sat down, they ate their food and they left. But, it was like, it wasn't a pleasant experience. But it was also an empowering one. Like I say, I was just like, I am not conforming to anybody's identity of me. I am just me. This is who I am.
How old were you, if you don't mind me asking, when you started going to these like anti-apartheid marches with your parents?
Oh, tiny. So my father was a member of the ANC, like way back. Like I say, I was born in 1970. We had to move from South Africa. Like I was born in Zambia. We had to move from Southern Africa I moved in like 1972. Because my father's friends were all disappearing, apparently. I was 2 years old. nothing to do with me really. But that's the story that I grew up with, was that my father's friends were starting disappearing because, you know, yeah, they were just disappearing. And so it was a case of just we as a little family. I've got two older siblings and two younger siblings, but my two older siblings are white. So from a different relationship that my mother had. And then my younger siblings are like me back. But yeah, so it was at that time, it was me and my two older siblings, my mother and my father. We had just had to leave Africa, the continent, so nobody disappeared.
Wow.
So when we came to the UK, yeah, that was, you know, I was, gosh, I can't even remember the first time I went on a march. Yeah, definitely 77. I think there was a big march in 77. But yeah, you know.
I'm just trying to understand like your child brain, because children don't really understand like racism. It's taught to them, you know, like it's not even a concept to them, it's taught to them. And I think that when you're taught from a really young age, like we have to go, you know, march and, you know, for these rights or for this reason, like then you start understanding these things. And so it's just, I think it's really curious to me. It's like from a very young age, you have been part of, you know, these movements against racism with your family. But at the same time, when you had your own encounter with racism, with this Black man misunderstanding your intentions behind seating him, like race wasn't an issue for you. Like it wasn't on your radar. Like, I don't know. I just think that's really curious and interesting, because I think that that kind of really illustrates a child, the like mind of a child is like these adults are like guiding us in life or doing these things with us or teaching us these things, and we understand it to a certain extent, like we process it to a certain extent, like this is what we do, we go to marches, we protest or whatever, but we don't really get it until I guess at a certain point in life, you know.
I don't know, I mean, my mother, to her absolute credit, she was very, very, very strong on the fact that we could do anything in the world that we wanted to do. Nothing could hold us back. So not our sex, not our color, not our, you know, race, anything. Nothing could hold us back unless we chose that. And so I was always brought up believing that I could absolutely be or do or have anything that I wanted. But not in like the spiritual, you know, sort of way that we say it now. I mean, that's what I constantly say to people, we can do, be, and have everything that we want, but it wasn't done in the same kind of a way, but it had exactly the same meaning behind it, if that makes sense. So I know that with the younger three children, so me, my little brother and sister, that belief that our color didn't matter, nothing external about us mattered, was drummed into us a lot deeper than it was for my elder brother and sister who are white, because they already had the advantage of being white. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you real quick about your experiences in growing up in the UK. Did you have any other direct personal experiences with like you being discriminated or experiencing racism, like for yourself firsthand growing up there?
I mean, there's stupid things like buses driving straight past, and, you know, sort of that kind of thing that happened. Yeah, that happened a few times, and not really going, oh, okay, weird. But here's another one anyway. That's what buses do. Another one's always on its way. But no, not really. Oh, there was that one time. Yeah, there was that one time with a guy called Adam. And he used to pick on me like from 11. We started school. I started school in Clacton, age 11. And there was this one guy who I know his name. I don't know anybody else's name from that school at all. Can't remember them really. But yeah, I remember this guy's name. And he was awful. He was incredibly racist. And yeah, and he stopped being racist when we were sat on the field making daisy chains, as girls do. Daisies. The boys were over there playing football, His ball, or the boys' football, ran over, like rolled over to where we were. So I picked it up and threw it back or kicked it back or whatever. And he then said, "Ew, get your hands off my ball. You N-word. Why don't you go back to where you came from?" And I just saw red and flew at the guy. I absolutely flew at him and basically beat him up. And then everybody had to grab us and go, AGR, because that's what everybody used to do back then. Used to like circle people having a fight. And he never touched me after that, curiously. But yeah, so there was that. But then because of that, and that all happened in, sort of my first year in the school, I didn't have any bad experiences with racism throughout my school days after that. But I think that story kind of, I don't know. I think the story preceded me. So people just didn't. I made myself out to be like this awful person now. I'm really not. I'm very lovely.
Well, we all have our little hood side, I think. I know I do. My moon in Scorpio. I'll turn on someone real quick.
There just comes a point, doesn't it, where you ignore it for so long and nobody's getting the messages. I remember going to the teachers and saying, this guy's being racist. Nobody did anything. And if nobody does anything, then it's up to you to do something. You can't let it continue forever. So if you do the proper channels, then that's why protests happen, because protests only happen when every other avenue has been explored, generally speaking. Like protest is the last resort. So if people are protesting, if people are fighting, then it's because all the other avenues have been ignored, have been tried and ignored.
Yeah. And I think definitely there's only so much a person can take in whatever it is, whether it's someone overstepping your own personal boundaries or whatever. Like I live in Latin America, and Latin America is very notorious for sexual harassment. And, generally, like as a woman, and this is not the topic, but, kind of in a way, you kind of have to learn how to deal with that and just ignore it and not pay it any attention. But I remember this one day, I just had enough, because it was like this group of guys and I was trying to go into my little class, and they just came over and they were like whistling at me, harassing me. And then I just like flipped out on them, and I don't remember what I said, but I just remember like flipping out on them and like screaming at them out loud or whatever. And, it just comes to a point where like we all feel like we get to this point of I've had enough, and like, you're going to listen to me today. So I definitely think that what you said was like such a powerful and valid point, is like, if people are really getting together to protest or against whatever it is, in this case, racism, it's because literally they've been ignored in all the other ways, countless times in their life. Like, it's not just like one time, it's like year after year in so many different situations and circumstances that they're just sick of it, and they really just want to be seen and heard. And that's why I also wanted to have these conversations, to have all of us share our own unique experiences for people to learn from, to see like, hey, this is our unique lived experience, and this is how it's hurt us, this is how it's impacted us, this is how it has really maybe in some sense kept us maybe in a way from really being our true selves, because we feel like we're not really welcomed or accepted by the community, the country that we live in, so
I mean, the thing with racism is it's every day, it's all day, every day, every day, and you can't escape it. Even if you don't personally witness it, that it is still there. It is still there. It is still, like, again, in Canada, there's like laws against discrimination when you're looking for jobs and things like that. In the UK, I don't know if there are those laws, but I'd be surprised if there had been in the past, put it that way. There could be the laws now, but there definitely weren't in the past,
Yeah.
It's all day, every day, and eventually eventually the global majority, which are people of color are the global majority. We keep being called the minority, but we're not the minority at all. You know, being pure white, that is minuscule compared to people of color, the number of people on the planet that have that.
Yeah.
But,
and like you said, it does get tiring to deal with this kind of experience day in and day out, year after year after year, you know, for however many decades in your life. And as people of color, I know last year there was a lot of stuff around people of color saying like they were tired of having to explain things to like white people or non-people of color, you know, about their experiences. And honestly, like it does get tiring. It does get tiring. Like, okay, let me tell you how it's been for me, which is why I wanted to do this video, to kind of have everyone share their own unique perspective, so that people of color and non-people of color could hear these different perspectives and see what it's like to live life through the lens of like our unique lives, because we all have vastly different backgrounds, but again, we're just like a tiny portion of the lived experience of a person of color, because we're all, you know, going to have different experiences. So anyway, Connie, what about you? What about your experiences with racism?
I grew up in a predominantly white area, and so like as a kid, Steph, speaking to your point, I didn't know I was different until this kid started teasing me on the playground, and I was like, oh, he's talking to me. And that was like kind of like the turning point for me to be like, oh, I'm different from other people. But because I had grown up in a predominantly white area and my skin tone isn't like, you know, like olive or whatever, like I'm pretty pale, I didn't think I was any different, right? And so but then it was like, then, you know, I kind of, my parents taught us English in our home. We celebrated Canadian things, Canadian holidays. We did a few like Buddhist traditional things, but overall, I grew up really believing I'm just Canadian. And I guess it was COVID that really changed that for me, in the recognition that I'm Chinese and I'm not actually like viewed as Canadian in Canadians' eyes because I'm Chinese. And then, but also like in my family, like my family that's still in Hong Kong, I don't speak their language, so I don't really communicate with them. And then all the anti-Asian hate that has really surfaced from COVID, and the fear for my family's safety was really, you know, I've dealt with microaggressions my whole life of like, you should be good in math and science, which I'm not. And that was, I was always like, what's wrong with me? People think that I should be good in math and science and I'm not. So there must be something wrong with me. And then now facing like all the anti-Asian hate and just like the fear for my family to be out and out. I do have some family that's in the States. So, you know, and I guess another thing to that is that I have a white presenting daughter who has also grown up just being like, I'm just like everybody else, right? Until she's with me and they're like, oh, you're not just a white person, you know? Or they say like, oh, are you her mom? Right? Because she looks so much like her dad. So yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's crazy like how, I don't know, I think we all need to educate ourselves on microaggressions, because we do it a lot of times not realizing it. Especially, I think that's what it is. Some people maybe do it on purpose, but I think a lot of it is just ignorance. We just don't know any better. And so when you see a person of color with a white looking baby, you assume like, oh, it must be the nanny or must be someone else. That's not the mom. And it's like, yes, that's the mom. But
yeah,
those
no,
are genes,
I remember
genetics.
being asked if I was adopted because my mother is white. Yeah, like, you know, and that's what's a question I had to ask my mum. Am I adopted? No, you're not. Okay.
And your
Because so
kids are
many
very
people
light
said it
skinned.
when I was little. Say again?
And your kids are very light skinned too.
Yeah, my children are very light skinned. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have to keep reminding them they are black.
That's good. What about, so Connie, I find it interesting because Janet has had nothing but wonderful things to say about Canada. She's like, Canada's amazing, but you're Canadian and you have experienced some issues there with racism. And right, I want to make sure I'm not speaking for you.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that's interesting because, again, like when I think of Canada, you know, the way that Canada presents itself is like, oh, we accept everyone, you know, of all cultures or whatever, like immigrate to Canada, you know, we want people here. And they make it seem to be like it's the most amazing place in the world for people of color. But do you really feel like that's the atmosphere there at this time, especially?
It's interesting. I have mixed feelings. I have always loved being Canadian. I've always been proud. And it's digging into our dark history that also is another thing to talk about. For, you know, like being Chinese people were excluded, like they weren't allowed to immigrate here, right? And then we've also had like, you know, the discovery of a lot of mass graves for residential schools, right? Recently we had an act of violent, like terrorism in London, Ontario, where a Muslim family was waiting to cross the crosswalk, and a truck like mounted the curb on purpose and took out 3 generations and left a young boy, right? And so it's true. I think that we are known to be a melting pot, but we do have a dark history that is being explored.
Oh yeah, definitely. There definitely is a dark history in Canada, but I think there is everywhere, unfortunately. But yeah, you know, like all the because in Vancouver there's a gallery, and all the shoes, there's like loads and loads of pairs of shoes representing all the children that were killed by, you know, government sanctioned Catholic residential schools. And it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And that, you know, that was cultural genocide that they tried.
I want to hear your ladies' thoughts on when people say like things around, well, that's in the past, like racism, or like these what is it, the schools for the indigenous people, what are they called again? Residential schools. Residential schools. Like that's in the past, slavery is in the past, like we have to move forward. Like what are your thoughts on that train of thought there? Sonia, do you want to start?
Yeah, for me, that's a tricky one, you know. Yes, I feel like, you know, there are ways that we need to move forward, but I also think that history repeats itself and humans are very good at forgetting things. And personally, I don't feel there's a place for us to necessarily forget it, and that we need to continue to educate. We don't need to sit in that deep space of darkness forever, but we do need to continue the education. We do still need to talk about it. We can't pretend it never happened, because it did happen, and the effects are still being felt today. That's personally how I feel about it.
What about you, Connie?
The last residential school in Canada was in 1996, which, you know, that wasn't that long ago. And yeah, like speaking to Sonia's point, like we do, in order for us to dismantle these systems, we need to understand where they came from, right? Otherwise, like we can look future, and, you know, I think that's something that we can all agree is a good thing. But until we like dismantle all of these systems and understand like what happened and caused those things, then they'll just continue to haunt us. Like it's not going to go away. We have to reconcile what happened with Indigenous people, right? Like that has to be acknowledged. And Janet, I don't know how you feel about like canceling Canada Day, but that's a big conversation that's happening right now of canceling the holiday which is July 1st.
Oh, Sorry, I don't know about the holiday. What's the holiday?
Yeah, so Canada Day is on July 1st, and there's a big call to cancel it, especially as there have been, I think 4 or 5 residential school sites that have been found to have like mass graves. So
Okay, yeah, I can't speak about cancelling the holiday, but I definitely agree that it's impossible to really move forwards and without understanding everything that has been before, without acknowledging everything that has been before. That is impossible. And that is actually why the world keeps repeating itself, because, you know, like there are Holocaust deniers, there are people who deny the harm that residential schools cause, there are people who weren't taught about the whole, oh my God, what's it called? Damn. In America, there was like a whole Black community that got burned to the ground. And, you know, they were lawyers and doctors and what are they called? I can't remember.
It
the
was
name.
in, oh, it's a very famous place in the Midwest or something.
Yeah. But because that whole episode was just erased. White people came in and they burnt down this incredibly prosperous Black community, and not just that one. There were many of them all over the country, and, you know, suffered similar fates. And because that wasn't taught in schools, it perpetuates this myth that Black people are unintelligent, that Black people are lazy, that Black people have never amounted to anything. When in actual fact, every time that they have, they've been torched. Did you
Tulsa.
get it? What then? Huh?
Tulsa? I think it was Tulsa.
Yeah.
It was like Black Tulsa or something. I got it, bingo.
Yeah. Black Wall Street.
This is a serious subject now. Okay.
Yeah, Black Wall Street. And the majority of Americans that I speak to were completely ignorant to the fact that that place even existed until a couple of years ago. You know, they were completely ignorant to the fact that, oh, what do you mean? Black people did actually achieve things? There were Black millionaires like way back when? Oh, okay. So what, they had their own communities that were really rich? What? But I didn't think that Black people could do that. Like the NFL recently, oh my God, have only just stopped this horrible practice of, what is it, race normalization or something like that. So if a player got damaged, like brain damaged, through playing the game, they would go for like scans and things like that and check on their cognitive functioning. And then those results would be normalized for the fact that, well, Black people, their brains don't function as well as white brains anyway. And that's literally just happened like in the last month. And that blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. So there was this like strong belief that Black brains don't function as well as white brains.
That's insane.
You know, and again, that is because true history wasn't taught. So it's only by acknowledging true history, what really happened, who really did what to who, that we can move forwards, in a way that serves all of us better, you know. But obviously, like, because I've read some of the things issued by the Catholic Church about the residential schools, and there is very, very little acknowledgement and responsibility that I have seen being taken there. And that, I think, is troubling, because unless the perpetrators take responsibility for their acts, again, they don't understand the harm that they've caused. So they will carry on perpetuating that harm. You know, they will carry on with the belief system. Well, you know, Indigenous people, they needed to be westernized in order to function properly in the world, you know, because before I came to Canada, exactly, yeah, I did this Indigenous Canada course because I wanted, you know, if I'm moving to the country, I want to know all about it, not just the pretty white bit. And yeah, it's you know, like the Truth and Reconciliation, that's what they had in South Africa. Yeah, truth and reconciliation. And to a certain extent, I think that that did help move the country forwards into a much, much better place. I don't know how far it's gone. I don't know whether in the rise of, sort of Nazism and right-wing politics that has spread throughout the world has affected that. But yeah, you have to have a full understanding of who did what and why in order to not repeat it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And just from like a healer's perspective, my perspective as a healer is what I teach, my clients. And I think, Janet and maybe Sonia, since we're kind of in this field in similar ways, we have to help people become aware of the stuff that they're holding on to, that they were programmed with, that they experience, in order to really heal from that and then no longer continuously repeat that to move forward in life. And I think what I saw a lot in the spiritual community last year, especially, that really prompted me to start doing those videos on racism and spiritual activism was there was a lot of spiritual bypassing there. So for me, basically, what spiritual bypassing means is that people are using their spiritual beliefs to not acknowledge the real lived experience of another. And so I saw a lot of spiritual people just saying a lot of spiritual things to not acknowledge the fact that racism does exist for people. They have had to, fight up against it and deal with it, and they were harmed by it in many different ways. And they used a lot of spiritual, teachings to kind of just, go over it and just be like, oh, well, whatever. And the thing is that if you just kind of go over it and pretend like it didn't exist or pretend like it's not such a big deal, then we don't get to break free from that pattern, from that cycle. We have to be willing to go to the past and sit with people and talk about that, because otherwise it's like you wouldn't, if someone hurts you, I'm not going to tell you oh, get over it. It's not a big deal or whatever. I really have to sit there with you and help you process that and acknowledge your feelings so that you can really release that and let that go, instead of suppressing that and holding on to that. Because if you suppress it and hold on to it, you're going to keep that in your energy field. And if you keep that in your energy field, you're going to keep manifesting it or attracting it, replaying it out again and again. And the thing is that I feel like if we want to make this world a better place and we want to have a world that is more equal for all of us, then we need to release the energy that is keeping all the trash, still on the planet, all the things that we don't want. But we have to be willing to release the energy. And so how we release the energy is helping one another process all of this stuff, all of this bent up, stored trauma that we have inherited from our ancestors, that we have had to live out ourselves because we inherited it, and to really help us release that energy so that we can move forward and move on. Otherwise, it just stays anchored on the planet. It stays anchored within ourselves. It keeps playing out within our own family bloodline, and we just perpetuate the cycle of trauma and harm. And so it's really important to talk about these things, because otherwise you don't move forward. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't really sat and taken the time to go within and heal and cry out a bunch of things and finally find peace and calm and resolution around lots of things in my childhood. I wouldn't be the person I am today if I hadn't done all of that, right? And the thing is, I'm not here to tell anyone what to do. So you can decide whether, you decide to, I guess, be more proactive in your efforts around raising awareness around racism or deconstructing your own racism, because we all have it on some level. And we're just maybe not aware of it. And then we have to take ourselves through that process of increasing our self-awareness to gradually, let go of those things, because nobody hears perfect. But I remember back in the day when I first started doing this work, my mom, she's a very Capricornian person, and she's just plow ahead, don't look at the back in the past, eyes forward, keep moving forward, keep trucking on. And I was there trying to go back to the past to heal. And my mom didn't see the point of that, didn't understand that. Why are we going to talk about the past? The past is in the past. You got to move on. Why are you dragging that around? Doesn't make sense. And I get that to a certain extent. But the thing is that, what's going to be more effective to you to move forward? Is it going to be to drag, I don't know, 100 pounds worth of crap and keep moving forward and just trucking ahead? Or is it more valuable to you to stop, see what you need, what you don't need, let go of what you don't need, keep walking, and then keep taking breaks to like let go of things gradually so that you can move forward and have an easier time. And so, you know, I've really seen for myself that you know, process of healing and going back to revisit things and break free from old cycles has served me tremendously to break free from a lot of things, a lot of generational karmic stuff, to allow myself to move forward and become the person I am today. And, you know, my mom's doing her own thing. She's healing in her own way, you know, and she's just exploring that. So I try to respect that as well. But to me, it just seems like the most effective thing to do is to have these conversations about these uncomfortable things, to raise awareness so that we can learn from them. And going back to what you said about apartheid in South Africa, I don't know a whole lot about that because I don't have any ties to South Africa. But the only things I do know about South Africa is through Trevor Noah on YouTube and what he shared on there. And this leads me to really encourage everyone who's watching, if this is something that interests you, is like go on YouTube, go on the internet, and listen to other people's experiences of racism. Like when I got into all of this topic last year, I started really, I don't know why, I was drawn to racism in Asia, and I found like channels like Asian Boss and the Black Experience Japan. And I started like hearing different people's perspectives around like why they left America for Japan, or, you know, what it's like to be a person of color or a Black person in Asian countries, and hearing their own perspectives and experiences, because it does get tiring asking all your people of color friends, like, hey, can you tell me about your struggles with racism? Like, it does get tiring for the person of color, like having to retell their story sometimes. Okay, not to say that you shouldn't approach, you should just see who you can approach and cannot approach. But when there's so many videos out there of people sharing their experiences, like I go to that and I try to educate myself around, you know, everyone's unique perspective and experience. And so that's what I do. So yeah, I think it's definitely important to go back and talk about these things. And so Trevor Noah was talking about how also he shared that similar belief around the fact that because people went back and talked about how harmful apartheid was, and they have conversations about this, and they really truly educate people on this, that people collectively, like, they know better now. Whereas I think in countries like maybe Canada or in the US, and who knows, maybe other parts of Europe or something, I don't know, I can't speak for the Europeans, can't, you know, speak a whole lot other than my own experience, but it seems like people just kind of try to sweep the past under the rug and just pretend it never existed. It's like, okay, let's move on, everyone. Like, it's like, no, you got to talk about these things, you know? Anyone have any thoughts to share there? No, I can redirect the conversation. Yeah, so I think it's just really important to talk about these things, because otherwise we get stuck in a loop and we don't really get to move forward collectively. And I think as far as like my teachings go, like what I teach people how to elevate their consciousness and how to expand their empathy and their understanding of the world beyond just their own unique perspective. And for me, at least, that's how I try to live my life, is to see things beyond my own unique, egoic, you know, single perspective, and to try to understand more than just me, because that's truly for me unity, is really seeing myself in the other and really being able to feel for them and empathize with them and understand them. And when we are so hell-bent in just trying to be right, in you know, just feeling like, oh, that's their problem, it's not mine, or, you know, I'm not racist, so I don't have to like learn about these things, or, you know, I accept all people, whatever, this isn't an issue for me, then you're not really expanding your capacity to really connect with others, and to support the Christ consciousness, or the connectedness of humanity, when you are so attached to your own, you know, like limited lens, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
I mean, you know,
Can I speak a little bit on?
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
sorry, go ahead, Jen.
No.
Everyone wants to talk now.
Anyway, go, Cody.
I was just going to speak a little bit on spiritual bypassing. And, you know, I wrote a post one time about like spiritual bypassing, and how when we use like spiritual practices to override like the human experience, and how important it is for us to be also in our human experience and like see what's going on in our bodies and stuff like that. And there's usually like two things that people will come back with. Like I've had to delete comments because it'll either be like, this is your sole contract and you've decided to come here as a Chinese person in order to learn your lessons, which may be true, but that doesn't deny my lived experience, right? And the other one is like, if you continue to focus on racism, you're just adding to the collective energy. So you need to stop talking about this. So those are like the two ways that I experience spiritual bypassing or see it within the community.
I think that's so interesting, right? Like this concept of soul contracts, because yes, I think there's totally a space for that. However, we are souls that have chosen to incarnate in this world at this time, and we are living in a physical body. And along with that comes our emotions and our thoughts. And it is our job to process that. And to bring us closer to that vibration of love requires growth and expansion. And the only way you can do that is to process your past, your thoughts, and to heal. And healing requires tapping into your emotions and understanding how you feel and understanding how you got there. And it's compassion for yourself and also compassion for others. And that's how we then expand that vibration of love. And I think it's just really, really important that we tap into our physical humanity, because that is where we are right now. You know?
I love that. Do you have anything to add to that, Janet?
Not much, not really, no. I was just going to say that the way that I work is I'm a Capricorn. Yeah, so the way that I work with my clients is that we are always going forwards. But when we hit an obstacle, that's when we go back to find out what put that obstacle there. But that's the only time that we go back. I have had a coach before that was obsessed with just finding the blocks. And when you do that, all you're going to find are more blocks, because that's where you're looking. And that just causes more blocks. That does cause more obstacles in your way. So the way that I work is onwards and forever forwards. It's one of my mottos, onwards and forever forwards. But like I say, every time there is an obstacle, then you dissolve it, you remove it, you go back, you find out where it came from. If that's needed, it's not always needed in the work that I do, but often it is. The whole spiritual bypassing thing, I think, is quite interesting, a concept, because yeah, it is missing the human aspect of our journey. You know, we are, as you all say, spirit with a human experience. You know, we're spiritual beings living this human experience. And if we're not going to concentrate on the human experience, then we are kind of missing the point of the journey. Do you know what I mean? It's like we came to live the human experience. So by not wanting to feel the emotions, by not wanting to analyze, oh, where did that thought come from? We are completely missing the human aspect, which I think is what people term as a spiritual bypassing, when you are just missing. But I don't know why it's called spiritual bypassing, because what they're actually doing is human bypassing.
I guess it's just spiritual bypassing because they're using spiritual beliefs to back up their reasoning for not acknowledging certain things or not sitting with certain things.
Yeah, but it's the human experience that they're disregarding, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With what Connie said, to me personally, I do believe in soul contracts. That's what I teach. And I personally, you know, my own lived experience, like just what I believe, I definitely stand behind that. And I get that. That doesn't mean that, you know, the experience and the emotions that come behind it aren't valid and that they need to be acknowledged and processed in some kind of way. Like that's part of being here, you know, we have to feel those things. You have to go through those things. So yeah, I don't believe that that's a reason to not do anything in regards to like racism, and to speak up against it if necessary, or to take the time to connect with others more deeply and support them if necessary around, you know, their experiences with racism. And then with regards to the other thing that Connie said about like, if you talk about it some more, you're just going to keep it here on the planet. Like, I personally don't agree with that, because that's the equivalent to saying something like, well, if you allow yourself to have a negative thought, or if you have a negative feeling, like, you're going to manifest bad things. So just, keep the vibes high, keep being positive, keep your mindset, whatever. And it's like, that doesn't make sense, because I know that's coming from like a fear-based kind of energy, where it's like, if I allow myself to feel anything negative or think any negative, that's going to result in something bad, and I'm going to manifest something bad. And I don't agree with that, because it's like, you have to stop, go within, like, release whatever is going on
But
with
there's
you.
a difference.
Huh?
Yeah, there's a difference between the energetic frequency that you are being, the energetic frequency that you are at, and being able to read something and say, okay, I'm going to do this, this, and that to change that situation. Yeah. Those are two completely different things. They're completely different energies. So you can actively be anti-racist, actively promote equality, yeah, and address racist issues, whilst also holding the vibration, the frequency of love. So when your brain is saying, okay, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, I'm going to change that. If it's coming from this whole energetic sense of love for all, then that manifests more love. Because that's the essence of who you're being at the time. Is who you're being is what the magnetic attraction is. The electromagnetic attraction. That's the frequency. Where you're actually, like, what you're reading and what you're saying. Yeah, they have energetic frequencies, but your brain energy is so much weaker than your heart energy. So much weaker. So if you're coming constantly from a place of understanding, compassion, love of self and the world, then that is the frequency that you emit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes complete sense. I couldn't agree with you more. That's absolutely it. And when you come from that space of love as well, and you work through this stuff, you're also helping to transmute that in the collective consciousness.
Yeah, because the collective consciousness there's two sides to it, and it's the highest energy wins. That's what one of my coaches used to say, a guy called Mike. Highest energy wins. At the moment, you have like white supremacy, you have all the hate groups who are absolutely fearful of losing their place at the top of the little pinnacle. They're, sort of white supremacist little, we're better than everybody else. They're terrified of losing that situation, that positioning that they've anointed themselves with. And then you have people like us, women of color, women in particular, black people as well, like black men, I mean, and all the other genders and everything else that there are in the world. Then we're on the other side. And if we all emit this enormous, enormous energy of love and compassion and equality, then eventually the balance will tip. But at the moment, people like us have been brainwashed by white is best. So a lot of people of color are actually on this side of the scale rather than this one. But when collectively we are in the majority, our energy is in the majority, then the balance will shift. And what you're experiencing now, I believe, is the shift of the balance. We are coming up, which is making these poor guys like freak out like crazy, because they're trying to cling on to what they've always believed is their rightful place. And all of a sudden you've got all these women, all these people of color saying, hang on a second, I don't think so. And they're like, what? But it's the balance of energy, our collective energies. And as soon as that tips, as soon as we have more people like us who hold our beliefs so strong that we emit these powerful, powerful energies that we are capable of, that we have innately in us, as soon as we can all do that and connect across the globe, as we're doing now, how amazing is this? As soon as we can do that, we build a web. We build a web of this super highway, energetic web of love, of compassion, of acceptance, of equality. And when our web weighs more than their web, we go up.
I love that. That you said two things that I want to address, which is what I was saying is sometimes people are afraid of talking about these topics and stuff, or feeling anything that they feel around it, or any low vibes, because they think that that's going to manifest something. But it's like, you manifest what you are consistently, not what happens in an instant, you know? So you don't have to be afraid of talking of these things, because it's about your predominant vibration inside of you.
Yeah.
So that leads me also to what you were saying around this shift in the world happening with more people coming from this place of love. I think sometimes people in the spiritual community are afraid of being more proactive in regards to racism, because they think that if you acknowledge that, if you acknowledge the elephant in the room or whatever, you're going to continue to anchor that in. When I think it's really important to understand that you can be proactive on injustice that you see here in the world. And I think one of the highest forms to be proactive is when you're taking a stand on things, but from a place of love, not from a place of, you know, negativity and judgment and resentment and whatever, even though that does serve its purpose, I'm sure. But when you really come from this place of unconditional love, and I really am choosing to stand up for someone who's experiencing racism right now, or I'm choosing to be more proactive in regards to racism right now, and you're doing it from a place of love, that is the highest form of I guess like spiritual activism that you can do, and what really supports, you know, humanity coming together and creating this web that Janet was saying, to start anchoring this into our playground here, that is Earth, and so that the old one can die off more easily and more quickly.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so let's see here real quick, ladies, to wrap this up, because we've been here for a minute. We took a minute to coordinate our thoughts here, but I think what I want to also address here in this conversation is the subject that, or the argument sometimes some people make in order to not address the subject of racism, which is that all lives matter. And I get this a lot from white people, and I don't know how else to explain it.
We're not.
I don't know how. I get that. I get all lives matter. I think we all agree all lives matter. But what are your thoughts when someone that is not a person of color says, like, well, I don't see color, you know, all lives matter and this and that, and they're genuinely coming from a good place, but that comment, I just don't know how to address it anymore. What are your thoughts?
If you don't see color, as far as I'm concerned, me personally, if you don't see color, then you don't see me. Yeah, because I am not fucking translucent. Sorry. I am not translucent. I am a color.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what I mean? Like my skin is a color. My skin has color to it. Yeah. So if you don't see color, you don't see me. And as far as all lives matter, it's so tired. It's exhausting when those come up. I have banned so many people from my social media spaces for saying that, because there's so much education out there to explain in very, very clear detail why, until Black Lives Matter, until Asian lives matter, until Indigenous lives matter, all lives don't matter. Yeah, because all is everybody, all is all beings. Yeah, if you're not including all the people that I've just spoken about, the Black people, the people of color, the brown people, the Indigenous people, all the people, Asian people, if you're not including them all, then you're not talking about all. So all lives can't matter until everybody's lives matter equally. It makes me so mad. It really does. Oh yeah, there's so much information.
I love how you say it with a smile. What about you, ladies? Do you have anything you want to say to that? All lives matter.
I think Janet has covered it. I think she's covered it when she said, it makes me so mad, because it does. It makes me mad. It makes me mad.
you know, I don't know. I'm not, when I get this comment from people, I mean, I know that they're coming from a good place most of the time.
No, they're not coming from a good place. Sorry, Steph, I'm going to call you up on that, because they're not coming from a good place. They're coming from an ignorant place. They are coming from an ignorant, non-understanding place when there is so much information that they can get their hands on to understand this situation better. So in this day, this now, they are not coming from a good place. They're coming from a place that has been blinded by their privilege of thinking that they are the all.
Yeah, I'm still gonna say that I feel like they're coming from a good place, but at the same time, they're just so deeply entrenched in their own privilege that they literally just don't get it. And it's like, I'm not gonna try to convince you, because what I've noticed in my journey is, even like earlier this year, I was like doing posts around racism and things like that, and someone reached out to me and was like, what is this stuff with racism? You know, I don't get it. I mean, maybe you can shine some light on this. Maybe I'm not seeing things. And like their words made it seem like they were trying to be better or trying to be educated or whatever, but I could feel the energy behind that. And the energy behind that was like, you really don't care. Like, you just want me to kind of waste my time explaining these things to you. And I redirected this person to my videos on spiritual bypassing racism. I was like, hey, if you're really interested, go and watch those videos, which I'm quite sure that they didn't, you know? So there are some people that, you know, they seem, or they try to understand these things, but they're not really ready. They're not really ready to. And it's like, for those people, I just don't waste my time anymore. I'm like, when you're ready, then maybe you'll feel led to my stuff or someone else's stuff to learn about those things. And when people come to me saying these things with like, all lives matter, and I, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, I know you're a good person and I know you're well-meaning, but you are just so, in my mind, like brainwashed by the system, by the privilege that you hold, that you don't get that there are people still today, like myself, who have real lived experiences still with racism, and that it is still affecting us today. Like, I know I'm very self-aware of when I'm, you know, in certain places, even in Peru, you know, this is Latin America and we come in all different shades, but even within Latin America, within our own communities, there is racism, you know? And so I'm very aware that depending on how I dress or whatever, or the area, the group of people that I'm in, people are going to look at me in a certain way, you know, differently from other people, probably because I'm brown. And, you know, there's like light skinned Latinos, and that's a whole, you know, thing there as well. So I don't know. I just, people who, what I see a lot is people who say all lives matter is a lot of times people who are unwilling to recognize their privilege, who are taking that as a defense mechanism because they don't want to feel like a bad person, you know? And so they're using that as a way to like protect their ego. And I just try to have compassion for those people.
But that's the thing, right? Like, how does Black Lives Matter, Asian Lives Matter, Indigenous Lives Matter, how does that detract from the statement White Lives Matter? It doesn't. There are two, you know, White Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Indigenous Lives Matter. One does not detract from the other. And so if you feel that by saying Black Lives Matter, you hear white lives don't matter, then that's on you. That's your belief shining through.
Exactly.
Can I speak a little bit?
Yeah.
A little bit to privilege. I think that one of the things that helped to open up a conversation, I guess, is that we all have like some level of privilege. If you're able-bodied, then you don't have to think about whether your buildings that you're going to are right. And so I think that for my white friends, I bring up this conversation of like, so as an able-bodied person, we don't worry about accessibility, right? So you as a white person have never had to worry about how your privilege like is affecting me, right? Because it's just like, I've never really thought about the fact that I don't have to think about accessibility, right? So I'm like, it just kind of opens this conversation of like, so your skin color means that you don't worry wherever you go, right? My skin color means that I have to think about some of the things that might have consequences, right? And that's how like I find you can at least like maybe crack a door open a little bit to have a conversation of so they can acknowledge it, right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, people are going to acknowledge it when they are aligned and ready to do it. You know, I can't try to make them see any differently before they're ready or whatever. And I'm not trying to convince anyone either. It's just like, I'm not here to argue with anyone or try to convince you or whatever and talk to you till I'm blue in the face trying to get you to see the light or see my perspective or whatever, you know, like, but I'm really big on conversations, and I'm really big on trying to talk to people who truly are ready and willing to like learn and understand. And so there are some people that are like, okay, please tell me about your perspective. Please educate me. But they really don't want to learn. They really don't care. It's like, okay, you're not my people right now. When you're ready, come and talk to me. But then there are people who are well-meaning, but I don't know, it's their own ego that's causing them to hold on to that statement to protect themselves. And
yeah, and I mean, it's definitely true that we can only view the world through the lenses that we're aware of. Yeah. And that's why conversations like this are really important, because it shows people, oh, there is a different lens, not just the one that I'm looking through. You know, like I have two pairs of glasses exactly the same. Yeah, but they have different lenses. Like this one allows me to see close up. This one allows me to see far away. But when I've got these on, I can't see. I can't read what's close up. And that's kind of the way that we understand the world. We can only see what we can see through the lenses that we have. If you're not prepared to change your glasses so you can see a different point of view, then you're never going to see it. It's only by going, okay, so maybe there are different lenses that I can experience this life through. Let me try on that lens for a minute. And how does that feel?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm really grateful for all of you being here to share your unique perspectives and experiences to hopefully have helped other people who watch this to see like our own different experiences and how it's impacted us based on, you know, whether we immigrated somewhere and like we grew up somewhere differently, or the time period that we grew up in, or just so many different factors. You know, like we're just a little small blimp, I guess, in the spectrum, I guess, of like how racism has impacted people. We can't speak for everyone. You know, our experiences are unique to us, but I really hope that this conversation has really helped other people to see how it has affected us and like how passionate we are about it. Like Janet is like riled up right now. She's just like leading the march in this conversation, and I love it. And
You get quite passionate, it's true.
Yeah, but that's why I wanted to have you ladies here as well, because months ago when I originally got inspired to do this call, it was also because Janet and Connie were just sharing powerful posts on Facebook that I happened to read, and I really loved their perspectives and what they brought forward and how they explained things, which some of these things they talked about today in this call. And then I also saw Sonia's post on Instagram as well that really helped me to see like, okay, like these women are all on the same kind of page as me. Like, yes, we all have our unique perspectives, but we really are just doing our best to bring awareness around this topic from a place of love as much as we possibly can, because we're all human and we all are flawed, you know, and sometimes, you know, our own egos will get the best of us, but we're all here trying to bring us together. And that was the point of this conversation, and having everyone kind of be here to share. So I'm really grateful for everyone, you know, being a part of this conversation. And I really hope that it has helped everyone who got to tune in. And I want to end this call right quick, but I feel like I have to talk about something real quick, which is around how entrepreneurship has been impacted by racism. Like, what I have noticed since the beginning of being an online entrepreneur is that I'm generally surrounded by white people, and I don't know why. I'm like, and I do have a lot of, you know, friends that are people of color, as we can see here, but I think that white people just like far outweigh that. No offense to anyone that follows me that's white, or any other friends I have, like they're amazing. I love them. No offense to white people, but I don't know why, I just see like this huge discrepancy in the entrepreneurial space when it comes to more representation of people of color. So I was wanting to hear maybe your thoughts on that, or how it's impacted you, something that you want to share there before we wrap this up.
May I just say something? I'm fairly new to the online space when it comes to business. And I've never been so aware of my color. I've never been so aware of my color, particularly in the spiritual industry. I do find it very whitewashed. And even from a perspective of looking at role models or mentors, I don't see representation of myself in the online space. It is very difficult to find. And I'm not specifically talking about people of color. I'm talking about Southeast Asian women. And, you know, if I may speak to an experience that I had recently, there is a white-led initiative in Australia that, you know, helps to educate in the coaching space. And they were advertising an event that was actually being held by 2 Southeast Asian women. And I was beyond excited. I was like, fuck, finally, I'm so excited to attend this. I left a comment on the Instagram saying, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to see this. You know, as a person of Southeast Asian descent, I don't often see our representation in this space. So thank you for putting this event on. My comment was deleted.
Why?
I don't know. It was bizarre. I could not understand it. And it made me then wonder if these people were actually interested in this conversation, or if they just wanted to appear to be interested in this conversation.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it is. And it affected me more than I thought it would. And I didn't actually have the courage to say anything to them. And I feel like maybe it is something that I do need to address. I feel like this conversation that we're having today, it's just been really eye-opening for me as well, because it's so good to learn, you know, from people from the other side of the world. But I feel like I need to start building up that voice, because I've been new in this space. I've just kind of been observing.
Yeah.
But I think it's now time for me to start speaking up about this a little bit more.
Yay.
I'm sorry you
I
had
think
that
the world
experience.
needs to hear your voice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The world definitely needs to hear your voice, Sonia. Do it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But yeah, just speaking to that whitewashed industry space, it's been disappointing.
I'm wondering why they deleted it. I'm like,
yeah, me too.
Is like most of their audience predominantly white, so they don't want any of the white people to feel bad from your comment? That's like what I'm guessing.
I think that might be the case. And also, I think they just didn't want to enter. I think they just wanted to contain it. I think they probably didn't want it to become a bigger conversation.
Yeah, I'm not about that life. I'm like, we must speak up and stand up. And like, that's the thing I really realized last year, especially like with conversing with Janet as well last year. And I was like, really trying to hear different people's experiences on racism. I talked to Connie last year, I talked to Janet, and just talking to different people in different parts of the world, even white people, because even white people in different parts of the world have experienced racism, not directly obviously for the color of their skin, but like the way that their country experienced that or dealt with that has been unique, you know. And I just spoke to people of all ages and backgrounds last year, and it really blew my mind as to the fact that like this life is really just about learning to really see beyond your perspective and trying to connect with people on a deeper level by hearing their stories and their journeys and, you know, how things have unfolded for them. So anyway, through talking to Janet last year, she mentioned some very well-known leader in the spiritual coaching industry or whatever. that took like a negative stand. I'm not going to say the names or whatever. It's up to Jen if she wants to mention this person's name, but basically like this person was not they didn't want to have this conversation at all in their community. And last year I really observed a lot of different leaders that were white, and I was like observing them to see like, I wonder if they're going to say anything. I wonder if they're going to like make adjustments now in the way that they do things, or in the way that people they hire people or whatever, now that there's this greater awareness around racism and just like what a deeply seated issue it is, you know. And I was just observing some people, and some people were very proactive and they were like really understanding, because you don't know if you don't know, like you don't know if this is an issue until like someone brings it up to you, you know, your awareness. And so a lot of people really started kind of understanding like, oh yeah, like maybe I need to diversify my team, or maybe I need to do something for people of color who might be a little bit underprivileged, because not to say necessarily that the color of our skin has to hold us back in life, but the way that the game in the world has been set up is that a lot of times people of color have to work harder to try to get to a certain place in life because of the unique communities that they grow up in, or, you know, just like so many different circumstances. And so, you know, not to say that white people don't have that struggle or whatever, you know, anyway, come at me if you want. But the point is that I really observed people last year to see, you know, and there were just some people that flat out did not acknowledge this at all, like in any of their posts and any of their content. And I was just blown away, because I was like, oh my God, like, what's wrong with them? Like, to say absolutely nothing on this topic. And that for me personally inspired me and motivated me to only work with people that I feel are of a very high integrity, and just really observing people and how they lead. And, you know, even though some people are really awesome, I'm like, I'm not going to work with you, because I really need you to like stand up for me. I really need you to like, I need to know that you really care about me and like people like me. And if you're not, you know, voicing that, then I'm not going to contribute to your business. I'm not, because I don't think that's fair, you know?
Yeah, that's the other thing though, that it's like Black-owned business, yeah, which is amazing. We love Black-owned businesses, but the misconception that a Black-owned business is going to be cheaper than a white-owned business, what the frick? What's that about? No, they're not cheaper. My services are not discounted because of the color of my skin. You know, and that's such a common misconception that, oh, if it's a Black-owned business, you're going to get it cheap.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to what you were saying, yeah, no, I left many groups that didn't acknowledge what was very, very, very obvious in the world. Yeah, because like you say, that to me also makes me feel completely unseen. Like, you know, like if I'm coming to the group, then I want at least some form of acknowledgement of what's happening, you know, like, because it was a global thing. You know, Black Lives Matter was a global event. There were marches all around the world. And so for you to put your blinkers on and go, oh, la, 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 I'm not listening, just peace and love, peace and love. And I'm all for the peace and love. I really am. But, you know, you have to be able to see what else is out there as well, you know, to, like we said before, to address it, and to, you know, truth and reconciliation and all of that business. If you're blind to the fact, then, yeah, you're blind to all of everything that is out there, you know.
Yeah. Connie's gonna need yourself.
I find that I personally go into spaces and I'm like, is there anybody on the team that can like see me, right? That will like acknowledge all of this stuff, but also that, yeah, because a lot of the spaces are ran by white women, which, you know, I'm not saying anything about, but like there are a lot of spaces like that. So when I see like that there is some kind of representation, but then there's also the flip side, because I'm in the like behind the scenes for a lot of businesses of like, we need to get more people of color. We need to get more diverse for our team. And my question is, why do you want that? Is it so that you can show like, I've got this diverse team, or is it because you're actually interested in having a diverse team? You know, so there's so many layers, like I find.
Yeah.
And then there's performative allyship, right? Where people were just saying things because they had to, like the Blackout Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
And then never to say anything again, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I personally didn't participate in Blackout Tuesday because it didn't feel aligned with me. I'm do whatever's in alignment. I don't follow the crowd. I'm like, whatever, screw the crowd. I do my thing. Doesn't mean I'm not supportive, but I had to, even my guys were telling me like, don't post anything yet, take a step back, process. Cause I was just processing so many things. Like the energy that week was just so intense for me.
Yeah.
And I was just processing and just trying to learn and whatever. And when I finally felt like it was time to come out of that and talk about that, I finally did it, you know, when I felt ready. And so that's what I was also giving other leaders in the coaching industry, the entrepreneurial industry, time and space. I was just like, well, you know, trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like maybe they're still processing, maybe they're still trying to gather their thoughts or they're uncomfortable, whatever. And I gave people, I feel, reasonable time, but I never saw any kind of acknowledgement after a while. And then that just really solidified it for me that like, you know, people, if they're happy to take my money, but then they're not happy to like, you know, and eager to, you know, equally eager to represent me and stand up for me, then like, screw that, you know? So like, if I had been put in a position like Sonia, you know, where like these women, you know, put on the show and I'm excited, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, yay, you know, I'm so glad you're doing this. And then they like delete my comment. I would have been like, what? Oh, hell no. Like, I'm not going to your thing anymore. Like,
I
what
didn't
in the
go.
world?
I
You
didn't
know?
go.
Yeah, well,
I wasn't going to support that.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
see, and you know, I don't know. There's just so many things there. Maybe I would have reached out and be like, hey, is there a reason why you deleted my comment? Like, I don't understand. Always trying to give the people the benefit of the doubt. I'm so nice. But otherwise, if they didn't have a good response or they ignored me, I would have been like, I am not giving you my money because I don't, you know, if someone had commented something like that for me, you know, that Sonia did, I would have been like, yeah, girl, of course, gotta represent.
Exactly.
I would have been excited.
Me too.
You know,
Definitely.
and I think that's really interesting what you say, Connie, as well, with you know, this whole movement around Black Lives Matter really increasing people's awareness around the need for diversity. And then it's a tricky space now because I feel like sometimes people are trying to find that diversity, but it's not with the best of intentions and energy behind it. They're just doing it just to look good, you know, for so many other reasons, but it's not because it truly feels aligned for them, maybe, or how to explain it. Like, I think people are now afraid, I guess, of in certain industries, not just coaching, entrepreneurial space, but like they might feel like, oh, this pressure potentially to hire people of color now, because if they don't, they're going to be perceived as racist. And that's like a tricky space to be in. And the reason I say that is because like recently I watched this movie In the Heights, and it's like an all Latino movie. And it's supposed to represent this neighborhood in New York of, you know, Latino people. And the director got a lot of backlash on the lack of representation of Afro-Latinos because they didn't have like a dark-skinned Afro-Latina there. Like there was a light-skinned Afro-Latina, there were other like light-skinned Latinos, but there was like all mix of colors, but there was like this huge uproar around that. And it's a tricky space to be in, I think, because I'm pretty sure that that director, their aim for doing an all Latino cast in this movie, talking about like Latino culture and whatever, was to promote diversity because we don't have enough diversity in movies, for example. Like I remember last year in the middle of like, I guess maybe before Black Lives Matter or around that time, I got on Netflix and I happened to see like this little Netflix billboard thingy. I don't know, the thing for the show, the picture for the show. And it was of like some high school type of show, whatever, these kids. And I remember looking at that cover and it was like all these girls that were, you know, different like backgrounds, like different skin tones, right? And I remember on the one hand, there was like this sadness, I guess, inside of me where I was kind of happy because it's like, oh my God, like finally, like a thing, you know, displaying like a movie or a show that actually has like proper representation. Like it has people of all shades. But at the same time, it felt kind of weird to me because it's like, where are the white people at though? Because I'm so used to having white people in everything that like when I don't see them, it's like something's wrong. Something's wrong with my brain, you know, like, because my brain has been so conditioned to constantly see white people on magazines and movies or whatever it is, that it trips my brain up. And I just felt kind of sad inside of myself to have that even thought or feeling, because I've been so, I guess, whitewashed because of my own experience, that it's like, it's weird or off if you see people of color being the stars of some show and not like a white person leading it, you know. It's weird. And so I was just like really interesting. It tripped me up when I had that experience for myself, because every time now when I see like movies or something, it's like usually some white person leading it most of the time. And I'm just like, oh God, like I'm tired. No offense to white people, but I'm just kind of tired of white people being on the posters for all the things. I just want some people of color. But then, like, even though I want that, when I do get people of color every now and then, you know, it's like weird to my brain, because it's like, oh, I'm not used to it. So anyway, back to the movie In the Heights. The director got a lot of flack because there wasn't representation that certain people wanted. The dark-skinned Afro-Latino community, they felt like they were unseen, and there was just all this stuff. And I'm pretty sure that it wasn't the director's intention to not represent them. I'm pretty sure that the director was just trying to get the best Latinos or for the different roles that, you know, he had to fill. And it just so happened that it maybe worked out in this way. It could have been that, or it could have been his own unconscious like bias, you know?
Yeah.
Because
No, we all have the unconscious bias, because
exactly.
we can't not have it, because it's so prevalent. Like, it's been repeated thousands and thousands and thousands of times. It's gone into all of our brains that, like, you know, sort of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, fair-skinned girl is more attractive than the dark-skinned, you know, afro hair girl, you know? That's just, we have been bombarded with that message so many times. It's almost impossible for our gut reaction to not think it. And then we can go, oh, actually, what? That's just my conditioning. I understand that that's just my conditioning, but your gut is still there, because again, you know, all our beliefs, all our thoughts, all our beliefs are caused by repetition. Yeah. You've seen, like, you know, blonde-haired white people in leading roles more times than you've seen attractive black people in leading roles. Therefore, you consciously think, or subconsciously think, that's the leading lady, that's possibly the extra, you know? It's like, I know of a black lawyer in London, and they, as they're going into court, are constantly mistaken for being the defendant rather than the lawyer. Because that's the conditioning, that's the training that we've all grown up with.
Yeah.
You know, especially if they're representing a white person, then you just jump. Oh, that's the lawyer, that's the defendant, and it's the other way around. But it's like if you have like a male assistant and a female boss, you go into a meeting that people don't understand that, then they'll start talking to the guy, because obviously the CEO is going to be a guy and the assistant is going to be female.
Yeah.
You know, and it's all of this that we need to reprogram. But it does take time. It does take time, and it does take, again, repetition when we see it over and over and over again, which is why it's so important for people like all of us here to have a voice, you know, to be the representation that we didn't get to see growing up. You know, that's why it's so important for us all to step up and all to have a voice and all to share our piece, share our truth. Because, you know, like 5 years down the line, if somebody with Sonia's heritage doesn't have Sonia to go, if she can do it, I can do it, then that kid might not do it. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's really important that we take the responsibility of all that we know and all that we are very seriously in perpetuating it into future generations. So we can say, yeah, I am the role model. I am the role model that I never had for you. I would love you to step up and be the role model for somebody 5 years below, you know, behind you.
I love that.
We need that.
Yeah. So just real quick with what Connie said, I guess it's a tricky, I think, environment to try to navigate around, like not just hiring people for a role or a job or whatever, just to have diversity, you know? And I think that if the person is just hiring people of color just because they have like guilt or they're afraid of what people will say about them or how they'll judge them just because they don't have enough diversity or whatever, like that's their own stuff that they have to deal with. So anyone listening, this is probably your stuff you have to deal with. I think ultimately you need to choose the people that are truly best suited for the roles that you're looking for, regardless of skin color. And if they happen to be white or black or brown or whatever, you know, that's just what it is. But you have to be really strong in who you are and remove any unconscious bias you might have and work through your own stuff that's probably causing you to feel pressured to have to, you know, diversify, if that makes sense, from this place of like fear or insecurity. Like, I don't know, it just, when you I think when you're really coming from this place of truly just wanting to align with the best people, how do I explain it? I don't even know if I have my thoughts gathered on this topic, but I just know for me, I'm gonna obviously want to have people of color, but ultimately I'm gonna choose whoever's right for the job. And I just hope it turns out to be a beautiful like spectrum of different shades of melanin in my team, and that's it, you know. And we'll just, you know, pray that that's what it is. Janet, do you have anything to say?
Me? I do have something to say. Obviously, I have something to say.
Go ahead.
I would love to hear Connie's point, Connie's opinion on this, though. I really would. On about the, because yeah, I completely agree that knowing the reason behind wanting a diverse team is really, really important. I remember having a conversation with one of my clients about the fact that because systemic racism has existed for so long, Black people in general are not technically as qualified as white people for certain roles because they haven't been able to have the free internship. You know, they haven't been able to have the experience that other people have had. And so in that respect, I'm a full believer in positive discrimination. So if I had two equally qualified people, I would probably, I don't know, well, I'm not going to even say that because at some point I plan on having this multinational billionaire company. So yeah, but you know, I think you have to look into the fact that positive discrimination does help to level the playing field because it's not level at the moment.
Yeah.
So having two identical people to make the playing field more level, you'd have to accept the Black person over the white person, which is tight for the white person. I get that. I completely get that. You know, and yeah, like the whole why behind the diversity, it's, in my opinion, it's because different cultures bring a richness that is impossible to find. It's like weak, I don't know, like soup with only carrots and no coriander. I mean, yeah, Connie, because you brought up that topic. So what are your thoughts about it?
Yeah, so it's teams and it's clients, right? So like people in the industry being like, I want to get more people of color into my programs. And it's the same question, like why? Right? Like, is it from a true space of like wanting to have different voices at the table, or is it from a space of like, now I can be like, hey, everybody, I have these, you know, I have diverse containers. And
For their own ego.
yeah. And so, and also they like, are they going to be able to repair if something happens, right? Like in the event that harm or, you know, some like racism or discrimination happens, what are they prepared to do in those cases? So it's like this whole, there's this whole other level of when you're wanting to like attract because some people will use scholarships, right? These are scholarships for people of color so that they have the opportunity, which makes the assumption that people of color can't afford things. But it also is like, are you prepared to hold that? You know, what will you do if that person experiences racism in your container, or like is offended by something, right? So it's only because I'm behind the scenes and because of the work I did before that this kind of stuff comes up of, why do you want to have a diverse team? And to Janet's point is that having different voices at the table just means that you have all these different perspectives from like all walks of life, you know, coming together to share and it makes your like company better. But it's also the question of, are you just trying to check a box?
Well, I know my answer in the example that Janet gave. If you have two equally qualified people, a white person, a black person, or whoever else, who would you pick? Personally, I go with alignment. I don't care what color their skin is.
Yeah.
I go with who feels like it's the right person for me.
Well,
If it happens to be the white person, so be it. I'm not over here trying to pick the black person, the brown person, whoever, just because I don't want, you know, my people to come after me saying like, oh, you just prefer white people, whatever. Like, I have to be strong inside of myself, and I know who I'm choosing and for what, and I'm choosing the aligned person regardless of
what
skin
if they're
tone.
equally aligned? What if they're equal in every single way? Every single way.
I don't think that, for me, I mean, okay, universe, infinite possibilities, of course it's possible. But I'm over here trusting in my guides that like, you're going to bring me the right person for each task. So if there are two people that come to me and they're equally qualified for a certain job position, and I feel good about both of them, and I feel like, okay, I want both of these people in my life to support me, then I would either see like, okay, so I can't have both of them for this one job position. Can I either divide the tasks here, or is this person more equipped to help me with these things and this person more equipped to help me with these things, you know? And then maybe I could bring on both, but I would just have to go with whatever I feel is right for me, you know? And that's, you know, my answer. I'm not here to tell anyone how to do their stuff. We're all here to do what feels right for us. All right, cool. So that's, I think, what I wanted to say in this call. I really hope that it has helped anyone, because I know that we've been talking for quite some time now, and I don't want to keep, you know, everyone has to go to sleep and stuff, start their day or whatever. So thank you so much, everyone who tuned in. Please let us know your thoughts, your insights, your perspectives, your unique experiences, your questions in the comments below here in the video, because that might prompt us to do another conscious conversation on this topic. I did have another roundtable that I wanted to do, but I needed to find a third person for that, because I do want to have diverse like experiences, perspectives, and I couldn't find that third person. So hopefully in the near future I can find that third person and we can address whatever questions you may have in the comments below. I know this isn't a comfortable subject for people, but we got to talk about it, you know, in order to make progress here. And you know, it's important to have these questions. I think no question is, you know, too dumb or whatever it is, because that's how we learn. That's how we become better, you know, and we're all ignorant in some kind of way. So the way to no longer be ignorant is by asking questions, legitimate questions we might have, so that people can help us. Because I know the three of us here and the people that I bring forward, we're people that are not going to sit here and criticize you and judge you or whatever. Like, we understand that you're trying to genuinely just be a better human, and we're here to, you know, talk to you and help you in some kind of way with what we know and we understand at this time, right? So thank you so much, ladies.
That's what it is what we understand at this time. Because we are all you know, a work in progress, as they say.
Yeah.
You know, so next week we might understand different things, next month we might understand different things again. And that, and I think that talks to your point of there's no dumb questions, you know, there's no dumb queries. It's all, yeah, just more understanding. More understanding helps us to expand, everybody. Well, I'm going to shut up now. Thank you so much for having me, Steph. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. No, I appreciated everyone here. I hope you all enjoyed everyone's unique
We
perspective and
did.
insight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
It's
so much
been
for your
lovely
time
to
for
meet
being,
you ladies as
yeah,
well.
for being so
Yeah,
generous.
me too.
And I will put everyone's contact information in the comments below. It'll be pinned to the top of this video, so you can reach out to Janet if you want to work with her or learn more about her work or follow her. She's really brilliant at mindset coaching and business. So if you want to reach out to her, go ahead and do that. Connie as well. You may have seen her from my previous video. I will link that up here if you haven't seen it. But yeah, she helps people with her businesses. She's a business manager and is helping people with business. And then Sonia as well is helping people with healing, relationships, and all that stuff, and really empowering women in regards to relationships and their own inner well-being. So if you want to reach out to them, their information will be in the comments below. But anyway, thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I appreciate you, and I will see you in another video. Take care, ladies. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.